Please pray with me. Lord, thank you for the things that come out of our children's mouths. Thank you for the ways that they are in tune with your heavenly glue that keeps us together, with your love, your forgiveness, and your grace that never runs out. And all of God's people said, amen. All right, good morning. It is everyone's favorite game show time, Bible trivia quiz time. Are you ready? Here we go. I only have 4 questions, so let's see how you do. Start you off with a softball. Shortest verse in the Bible. Go. Jesus wept, right? Almost everyone's got that memorized. John 11:35, Jesus wept. Does anybody know the longest verse in the Bible? I had to look this one up. I did not know this one. Esther 8:9, which says, the king's secretaries were summoned at that time in the 3rd month within this month of Sivan in the 23rd day, and an edict was written according to all that the Mordecai had commanded, and to the Jews and to the satraps and the governors and the officials of the province of India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to every province in its own script, to its own people in its own language, also to the Jews in their script and their language, the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Right. That's one verse. Oh my goodness. All right. So now, the Bible, as we know, is not just one book. It is a collection of 66 books. Does anyone know what the shortest book of the Bible is? Someone said it. I heard somebody say it. 3 John. Exactly. Only 219 words in the entire book. It's really, really short. All right. Finally, number 4, the longest book in the Bible. Ooh, it's tricky. Someone said Isaiah. I heard someone mumble something else. All right, Psalms, okay. Here's why this is tricky. The way that the scriptures used to be written down were on scrolls, parchment made of animal skin, all right? And the way that they would transcribe them, because of the way that they were transcribed, in scroll form, the longest book is Isaiah, if you're gonna write it on a scroll. In our written Bibles here in the West, if you go by sheer number of chapters and words, it is actually Psalms, all right? So in fact, if you open up the Bible to sort of find the middle and open it up, you'll probably hit Psalms because it's just that long, all right? The word psalm actually means song. Right smack dab in the middle of our Bible is a song book. Some of the Bibles actually have directions, right? It'll say Psalm, whatever, and then it'll have directions of the director of music, and it tells you what song or what tune to sing that psalm to. But here's the thing, this kind of doesn't make sense for us a lot, because today, most of us, we just listen to a song and that's it. We just listen. We might say, oh, that's kind of got a groovy beat. Or if you're younger than me, you might say, oh, that song is so lit. But that's not the way that Psalms were written. The Psalms are much more like a very, very different song that I guarantee you all know. When you hear it and when you can sing along with me. Clean up, everybody, everywhere. Come on, here we go. Clean up, everybody, do your share. What happens when someone sings that song in your presence? What do? You clean up and you do your share, right? That's what you do. That song implicates you. You don't just sit there and go, oh, that's kind of catchy, that's kind of groovy, that song is lit. No, that's not what happens. When you hear that song, you are being invited, if not expected, to do something, right? This is the kind of song and songs that the Psalms are. We can certainly be comforted by their poetry, and we can gain wisdom and knowledge about who God is and what God is like. But ultimately, the Psalms are there to get us to move, to be involved in God's kingdom, to reframe and reshape our lives. So today, we heard what is perhaps the most famous psalm, and a lot of people's favorites, the 23rd Psalm. We read it at funerals. You've probably seen it on greeting cards. You may have it on a plaque in your house, or your grandma does, or somebody does. But it's not just words and phrases, right? Because that's not what the Psalms are. They can give us comfort in hard times, but the Psalms are there to implicate the hearer. We're supposed to do something when we hear them. Now, here's the issue with that. this gets a little complicated because the Psalms were written in a different time and a different place than our own. The oldest Psalm is Psalm 88, which was written over 3,500 years ago, about the year 1500 BC, right? Like totally different time, totally different place. By the way, bonus trivia question. We had 4 earlier, here's bonus. Anybody want to take a stab at which is the newest Psalm? Like the Psalm that was written last? It's Psalm 1. It was written after they had collected all the Psalms as sort of an introductory psalm to the rest of them. Fascinating. But even that psalm was written about 2,500 years ago in the year 440 BC. All right? So obviously, the words, the language, the expressions, the metaphors are all from that time, that land, that context. So it's really easy for us to hear the words, but we might not really fully understand what's actually being said. We've all experienced this, right? You maybe heard somebody use a phrase and you're like, I don't know what that means. I don't understand. Like if I said to you, I'm pretty much not going to do anything when I get home. I'm kind of high-key excited for it. No FOMO for me. A lot of you would look at me like, what are you saying? I have no idea what you just said. All right? If you want a translation, talk to somebody in the millennial generation. All right? But lest you think, oh, those weird millennials, they talk funny. No. It works when you say it too, right? If you say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, somebody might look at you and go, why are you throwing babies? Like, what is wrong with you? That's ridiculous. So, and again, if you want a translation for that phrase, go to talk to a baby boomer. So when we hear the phrase, the Lord is my shepherd, like we need to recognize that we might not really understand what that means because none of us, at least I don't think any of you, and I know I haven't, none of us have ever been a shepherd in the valley of the Negev River in the Holy Lands. Around the year 1000 BC was probably when this psalm was written. And shepherds in the Middle East at that time were not old men with beards, nor were they middle-aged men. The vast majority of shepherds at that time were children. And evidence seems to suggest that the majority of them were girls, young girls, preteen teenagers, all right? I've got 2 volunteers that are gonna stand up for me. Lydia, would you stand up for me, like on the pew so we can, yep. And Jordan is gonna do this as well, all right? Okay, you want to, okay, she can stand right there. Fantastic, all right? Now, for just a moment, take a look at these young ladies and have their image in mind as you hear the word of God. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. Like, how's that for flipping the image that you might have of a shepherd when you read this passage? All right, thank you, ladies. You can sit down. Let's give them a hand. All right. This is the context. All right? But that's only part of the context. Because what about the location? Where are these young girls shepherding their sheep? I don't know about you, when I think of like shepherds, I think of like wide open spaces, you know, the green fields that we have here in Wisconsin. But of course, that's not at all what the terrain looks like in the Holy Lands. Like that is like rocky, it's hilly. There's like little leafless bushes all over the place. The ground is hard and it's dry. Like think like West Texas. Or like New Mexico, right? Like that's what the desert of the Holy Lands looks like. So that begs the question, if you're a young girl shepherding your sheep and your goats, what are they eating? Like you're not bringing food with them because that would take, like she couldn't carry all of that. Well, here's what happens. Like here's how the sheep and the goats find their nourishment. In that part of the world, the winds blow from the west across the Mediterranean Sea. And it picks up all this moisture as it's coming across the sea, and it comes ashore. And what do you think happens when all that moist air hits those hard, dry rocks? Condensation, right? And little droplets of water form on the rocks, and they pool around the base of the rocks. And what happens then is overnight, as the temperature drops, little tufts of grass pop up, right? Now, we're not talking about grass that looks like your lawn. Okay, it's not that. It's these little clumps around these like sort of shallow places of dirt around the rocks. This is what the psalmist is referring to when we read, "He makes me to lie down in green pastures." Now please understand, like those tiny little clumps are enough for like a mouthful for a sheep or a goat. There's no endless supply of grass. There's no way for you to like store up grass for tomorrow. The image of God as a shepherd leading their flock into green pastures is not an image of abundance or having enough saved up so that you'll be secure for tomorrow or next week or the next fiscal year. For this shepherd, the invitation is to be okay with what God has given you for today and not worry about tomorrow. You'll get what you need for today. Tomorrow, don't worry about that. That'll happen tomorrow. But then, what are we made to do when we get to these green pastures? What posture do we take? These pastures that show us that we get what we need for today and not tomorrow, what do we do there? We lie down. Lying down means you feel safe. You're secure. You're relaxed if you lie down. You are at peace. You're not worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. The Bible calls this the Shalom of God. This happens when we choose not to listen to the voices of other shepherds that tell us, that we need to make sure that we store up for ourselves treasures on earth. And those voices do exist, don't they? They come from within us. They come from all angles around us. There are the news, our friends, coworkers, politicians, family members. We're not told to lie down and relax. We're told to watch out. You don't have enough, so stand up. Worry, pace back and forth. You might not have enough. You tell yourself, if I just have this or if I just have that, then security will be mine. These are the voices that we're bombarded with. Jesus speaks of this very thing in the gospel today. There are other shepherds, strangers, he calls them, but followers of Jesus, followers of this shepherd, know his voice and they follow his way. His way promises us green pastures, which is all we need for today and nothing more. This is good news, yes? Like, what would it feel like to not worry? Like to say yes to this invitation, to have this shepherd come into our hearts, our lives, our minds, our souls, so that we can indeed lie down in peace. Like, we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to be afraid. This shepherd has led you to green pastures beside still waters. This is so countercultural, right? Because we believe that peace will come to us when we work, and our hands are full and we have everything that we need. Then, once my future is secure, God, then I'll lie down, okay? But this shepherd is leading us in a different direction. Peace. The shalom of God comes when we trust the good shepherd. And I guess, don't miss this. The shepherd knows where your next green pasture is. The shepherd knows where to take you. The shepherd knows how to provide that for you. Like, we don't have to do that ourselves. We're not the ones that have to figure out how to have peace. That is God's job. Can we trust God that much? Now, if you're like me, you say, how? How do I trust God that much? That sounds great, Aran, but holy cow, that is not easy. I want to suggest two practices and then we're done. The first, when you hear a voice or voices of what Jesus calls the stranger, a voice that's telling you to be afraid, or a voice that keeps you from lying down, eliminate that voice. Turn off the TV. Close that website. Swipe left. Change the conversation. Practice what it means to listen to the voice of the Good Shepherd. Reject the voices that lead you away from the shalom of God. Now again, this will fly in the face of culture around us, which is why it will take a lot of practice. The second thing is a little more controversial. Read and pray. Doesn't sound controversial, but here's why. get your nose into the teachings of Jesus and pray, asking God to reveal to you what God has for you. This is tricky because all of us, we already know what we know and we think what we think and we believe what we believe. Most of us are pretty set in that. What we believe about like God, Jesus, Bible, church. I want to invite you to listen for God's voice in ways that will disturb you. Not in a negative way, but in a way that will set you on edge. That will cause you to ask questions like, wait, God, it couldn't possibly mean that. You're not saying that, are you? What if the answer to that question is, yes, my child. Now lie down in this green pasture beside these still waters, and let me restore your soul. Amen.